Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Zakowicz. On today's episode, we're going to explore the career of a urologist with Dr. Justin HOUMAN. Justin, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Looking forward to this. So let's do some level setting. Quickly tell us about kind of your role and how long you've been in the medical field for.
Yeah, so I'm now currently in my 7th year of practice. So as you said, I'm a urologist. I specialize in men's health. Yeah, and I've been doing it for about 7 years now.
Very good. And going into urology, was there something, did you always know you wanted to do that? Or is there something in med school that got you in the residency? How'd you get into the urology side of the field?
So I always thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. So my father's actually a urologist. So, I knew some things about urology, but I didn't know a lot of it. I'd see his lifestyle. Sometimes, very rarely, would I go into work with him. But when I was in medical school, I always wanted to do surgery. So I know I wanted to be a surgeon. And I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. Halfway through my 3rd year of medical school, I had some elective time. It's like, well, let's see what urology is all about, the day-to-day of it. I saw what my dad's lifestyle was like when he came home, but in the office, in the OR, I didn't have so much of a perspective on it. So I did the rotation with the urologist, and it really just stuck with me for a couple of reasons. Most importantly, I would just say the personalities of the doctors within the field. If there's one thing I could recommend to anybody, any doctor, any medical student, is you're trying to figure out where your career is, try to match it up with the personalities within that field. Whether it's surgery or medicine, the different subspecialties within surgery, even within medicine, they all have different personalities. And whoever you generally vibe with the most, it's probably a good indicator of where you could see yourself, or at least it's something if you vibe with that specific specialty, it's something to consider.
Okay. And how would you classify or characterize the personality of urologists?
Yeah, so urologists, so the beautiful thing about urology is it's very rarely is it life and death, right? It's more of a lifestyle specialty in terms of improving patients' quality of life. Don't get me wrong, we deal with cancer, prostate cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, all that stuff. So there is a life and death component to it, but it's more of a quality of life. It's a great field it's a good mix of medicine and surgery. And because of that part of the body we work on, no one really takes themselves too seriously, which again, that kind of fits into my personality. It's generally pretty laid back. A lot of the urologists, again, they don't take themselves too seriously, which was important to me. Good jokes, good laugh, good lifestyle. So yeah, as soon as within the first couple of days of doing the rotation, I knew that I was vibing with them. And to this day, it still hasn't led me wrong. I love all my friends in residency, even my current colleagues. It's been very, very nice.
All right. So if I find a urologist at a cocktail party, I should stick by them. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what.
I like a good time, so.
Yeah, you wouldn't be disappointed.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, you get some free medical advice.
And then I want to talk to you a little bit because you want to be an orthopedic surgeon. So I'm assuming you are. This could be a bad assumption, but most orthopedic surgeons tend to like sports. I'm a big sports guy, so is that a correct assessment on my part? And then when you decided to make the switch, like, did you look back and go, okay, maybe I did want to do that, but I didn't want to do as much as I thought I did? Or did you love it? You just found something you loved more?
Yeah, I think I think I've always liked the surgical aspect of orthopedic surgery, and even to this day, like sometimes when we share the floor, like the orthopedic surgeons share the floor with us sometimes, I'll pop in and see some of the surgeries they're doing. It's very intriguing to me. But no, I have no regrets about choosing urology again, because the fact that it's a nice mix of in-office plus surgery. It's a good mix of medical management of diseases, as well as surgical management. To me, it really checked all the boxes.
Very good. And let's talk about that a little bit. So are you currently in private practice, or do you work for a larger organization?
I'm in private practice. Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit about someone who's going into the field, what they should kind of expect coming out? Like, are they typically, I'm assuming they're not going to private practice right away, right? They're getting some experience through some sort of affiliated organization. That could be a bad assumption, though. But talk to us through kind of starting out and then kind of some of those different avenues that they might want to pursue.
Yeah, so medicine is obviously changing in a number of ways. More and more doctors coming out of residency, whether you're a urologist, a surgeon, internal medicine doctor, more and more people are going into employed jobs, whether it's hospital employed, part of a larger medical group. These employed jobs where you're salaried, you're given a very nice, comfortable life on the front end, a good salary right to start, and you basically doesn't matter how many patients you see or how many surgeries you perform, you're getting the same amount of salary on every year, and sometimes that goes up. Um, for me, I went to private practice. Look, I did my residency and my fellowship here in LA, so I had a sense of the landscape. So going into private practice immediately after fellowship wasn't as daunting because, again, I had a sense of what the landscape was like here. If you're going to go to a new city, to your point, it's quite difficult to jump directly into private practice. You want to, a lot of times, you take the comfortable salary position, make some good money, stack your chips, and at some point, you could jump out into the private practice model, which from a financial standpoint can be quite beneficial. From a lifestyle standpoint, can be very difficult, especially early on. You have a lot of sacrifice. But yeah, the way things are going right now, a lot of more people are going into hospital employed jobs just because of the comfort and the safety associated with it.
And you said there's more difficulty in going to private practice. Does that difficulty come in from doing all the other stuff, right? The admin type stuff, the business side of the stuff on top of practice, or is it growing the business, right? Trying to figure out the marketing and all that stuff to grow the business. Where does the primary focus of that additional challenge come in?
So it's all of that. It's not just
Yep.
practicing medicine. It's not the clinical aspect of practicing medicine, the surgical aspect. It's running the business, right? From A to Z, making sure, from employees to purchasing tape, right? Making sure everything is stocked up, to the marketing aspect of things. These days, especially if you're in a tough city or not, I want to say in a big city, not a tough city, but if you're in a big city, you have competitors. So you want to market, you want to grow the business, doing all of those things. It consumes more of your time rather than just being in a hospital or any employed position where your only job is the clinical aspects of medicine.
All right. And then talk to us a little bit about what's your typical day and week look like. So I know there's probably most people will tell you there's no typical. I think no, regardless of the type of work you're in, there's no typical. But walk us through kind of realistically what someone might expect. You could take it from both sides, but you're obviously in private practice. So walk us through how often are you seeing patients? How often are you dealing with, the note side of things? But give us a little perspective if you can.
Yeah, so big picture wise, I generally see patients in the office 3 days a week, and I'm operating 2 days a week. And that could vary. Some days, sometimes I'm seeing patients 4 days a week, sometimes I'm operating 3 days a week. So there's that fluctuation to it. Um, so that's the bulk of it. That's the general framework of the week. If there's slow weeks where potentially there's less surgeries, for example, there's always something to do, right? There's always whether it's calling patients back, going over lab results, marketing, business stuff. Marketing is a big one, right? Especially for what I do. I do men's health, specifically male fertility. Here in Los Angeles, there's a number of us who do it. So it is something that the more you market, you get better ROI on it. So there's always the beauty of this job is, especially in private practice. The one thing I'll say is the beauty of it is you're fully autonomous. You have full autonomy over your own schedule, which is incredible, right? It's an incredible feeling because that's the number one thing that leads to physician burnout, not being in control of your schedule. But with that, there's always something to do, right? There's always something to do. And this is probably a very bad habit of mine. I'll always have, if I have my computer open, there's tabs in which there's tasks in my mind in which I have to do, which I think early on I loved it. Now, like if I open my computer on a weekend, just by default, I see myself going into those tabs and doing some of those things. And even my wife is like, "What are you doing? Like, you always have something to do." So, you have to figure out that work-life balance portion of things. But yeah, having autonomy in private practice is probably the best part of our jobs.
And then you mentioned you're in surgery a few days a week. I can't talk today, so this is perfect for interviewing someone. But a few days a week, and then you talk about doing the surgeries. So give us an idea about types of surgeries that you might perform.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm a men's health urologist. So what I do is primarily guys who can't have babies and guys who can't have sex. So a lot of my surgeries focus on those elements of things. So when it comes to guys who can't have sex, I do a lot of penile implant surgery. So inflatable penile implants. So it's basically putting in a prosthetic device into the penis itself, where it has a pump. Anytime a guy wants to have sex, he squeezes the pump. Everything is contained under the skin. Squeezes the pump, gives him erection. and then he releases it when he's done. That's the sexual side of things. From infertility, I do a lot of microsurgery, microsurgical varicocelectomies, which address varicoceles, varicose veins of the testicles. That's primarily more the biggest part of male infertility. Vasectomy reversals. I do a fair number of vasectomies as well. And then because I'm a urologist, I still do a lot of general urology, kidney stone surgeries, prostate surgeries, any type of urological surgery. I still do a lot of those as well.
Very good. I appreciate the detail there. You mentioned before, I'm jumping all around, but you mentioned before you're in the LA market, so much larger city than, say, Omaha or something like that, but one of the larger cities in the country. There's obviously with that is going to come a lot of competition. You're in private practice, so you're competing with some of those, but you also mentioned it's kind of a good market, right? A strong market. So what does your competition look like from I guess just from a competition standpoint? Like, I'm going to ask this from two ways. One, are there certain, I'm going to go back. There's a better way to ask this question. Are there certain markets, using LA as an example, where there's less competition for a urology specialty than others? And then as a urologist, say you're going into whether it's private practice or into a healthcare facility as an employee, is there a growing need for urologists, or what's the internal competition like? So I hope I asked that the right way. I went through four different ways to ask that, but
no problem. The first part of that second part was what? The first part of that question was.
First part was overall competition from like a business landscape, right? Are there certain markets, LA is an example, where there's more of a need for it, maybe where the competition is maybe less than you might have in some other area. Second one's more internal competition. So if I'm going for a job at XYZ healthcare facility, what's my likelihood of, facing stiff competition to be hired at that position?
Yeah. So for what I do from a men's health, male fertility type landscape, being in a big city obviously is better, primarily because big cities, generally speaking, you have more volume for what we do. Male infertility is a very, very small portion of urology as a whole.
Okay.
But when you're in a bigger city, guys are getting married at a later age, or couples are getting together at a later age. Infertility is higher. Infertility rates are higher, slightly higher than if you were in a rural area or even a suburban area. So we do see more volume here from a infertility standpoint. So it's better to be in a big city specifically for what I do. Now, when it comes to employed positions at hospitals, urologists as a whole, there's a big demand for us, right? There's a high demand for urology. So when I graduated residency 8 years ago, there was probably only 250 urologists who graduated nationwide. So there's and now obviously there's more and more urologists who are coming up because they're trying to fill that need, especially as these older urologists retire. But there's not going to be a lot of internal competition. Like where I practice, there's 2 medical towers right here right by Cedars-Sinai. There's honestly 50 urologists in those 2 towers, and you won't find a single urologist who's starving for business in either of those buildings. There's just that much demand for what we do.
Interesting. Is there any particular reason why you think that there's a growing demand? Well, you mentioned demand, but like why there's maybe the other better question is why there's a shortage of urologists going in, or is it just it's not keeping pace, right? Not necessarily a shortage, but it's not keeping pace with the demand.
Yeah, look, urology is actually quite competitive to get into. I think some of the
Okay.
match rates for medical students to get into residency, when I applied, it was probably 60%. I think at some point it went up to the 80s, probably back down into the 60s. It's a competitive field to get into, but I think what happened was the number of spots available was a little behind, and I don't know too much. Some of that has to do with politics, with finances, with how much the government as a whole could fund these residency spots. But all in all, they're catching up to it, which is helping fill some of that void and some of that gap. But yeah, there was a period there where I think as a whole, as a nation, we were behind, especially not just with urology, but with other medical specialties as well.
Very good. I'm going to shift gears a little bit more to some of the skills that you find good urologists have compared to maybe less desirable ones. So I'm assuming modesty is one, right? If you're too modest, it's probably not the best career for you. Just a hunch here, but talk us through a couple of those skills that someone could really look at and say, okay, these are good fits for me, and these are things that maybe I should work on if it is a field I want to go into, but maybe I'm not especially strong at it. So walk us through some of those kind of core skills if you could.
For urology, right?
Yep, yep.
I mean, for one, I would say similarly, like don't take yourself too seriously, right? If you're the type of person who hardcore surgeon who defines your life by you being a surgeon, I don't think as many urologists define themselves in that particular kind of way. We all really appreciate our work-life balance because generally speaking, amongst surgical specialties, we do have one of the best work-life balances. Obviously, you want to be good with your hands. You want to be able to we operate, we do procedures in the office, we do big surgeries as well. So you want to be good with your hands, good hand-eye coordination. Bedside manner is a big one, specifically in urology, because there's a lot of intimate topics that men talk about, erectile dysfunction, sexual dysfunction, kind of being the big one. But even any type of urinary issues, a lot of embarrassing topics that men come to a urologist to speak about. So you do want to have, the bedside manner generally should be. I think the expectation is higher than the average physician. And then what else would I say about that one? Yeah, I'd say the real big one is just making sure that you don't take yourself too seriously, or you don't, because there's a lot of, like, you see a lot of weird things in a given day. You see a lot of weird things. You touch a lot of weird things. You smell a lot of weird things. So you kind of have to don't take you're gonna deal with a lot of stuff. Just get ready for it.
All right, that's good advice. I appreciate that. How about the most challenging parts of the field that you work in?
Look, I think this is just being in medicine, and I'm sure it's like this in any career. But I could just talk about medicine, and what I do is there's like, in a given day, you could have a great day where you're not being contacted, and just a nice chill day. You could have that, and literally the next day, it could be you are being dragged, you're being pulled in 15 directions at once, and I really mean that in terms of 15 directions, where you're getting a call from your staff at the office. You're operating on a patient. The residents in the hospital are telling you, hey, listen, one of the patients on the floor is having these issues. And you're dealing with, that's all with the work stuff. Then you're dealing with the personal stuff at home, dealing with your family and whatnot. You have to be ready to be pulled in all these different directions. And I know, again, goes for any career, really. But with medicine, there's a little bit of time sensitivity to it, and you're dealing with patients' lives. So there's a higher bar a little bit. So that's probably the most stressful part of it. I think early on in my career it would drain the hell out of me. I feel like I'd come home after some of those days, and I knew I was just like, man, I would feel like I had to come home and have a drink, and I knew that's when I'm like, dude, I'm pulling myself in too many directions. Now, over the years, I've become a little bit more numb to it, a little bit more resilient to it, where I'm not being so beaten up by those days. But I'll tell you, man, it happens at least once a week. If you could keep it to once a week, it's great, but usually it's sometimes more than that. But
So
you have no control over that of it. That's just the life.
yeah, you mentioned you've become more resilient to it. Is it the fact that you're just more resilient to it now, or were there things that you kind of learned? With age comes wisdom. So did you learn something that be like, hey, I was doing this before, I need to do this now, and to help you cope with it a little bit better?
Well, I think a big part of it, in all honesty, was my own anxiety towards it, where I was like,
Okay.
so if I'm in the middle of clinic, for example, and I have patients waiting, and the hospital's calling, my staff is saying, hey, there's patients, it has some questions. The residents are calling about a patient in the hospital. I'm being pulled in these different directions, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, these patients in the office are gonna, be very upset because they're waiting longer. And, because we're in private practice, like, well, listen, we have to provide customer service. This is going to hurt the business aspect of things. But once you go through these ebbs and flows and these iterations of the same thing numerous times, and you realize that it's not as bad as it seems, right? It's not as bad as you envision it in your head. You're like, all right, it's going to be fine. I got through this last week. I got through every other week before it. I'll get through it this week. You just got to, get through it. Do the things that are of most important, high priority first, and then everything else will fall in line. So it's just, I
Sounds
think a lot of times I overhyped it myself.
Yeah, it's natural for people to do, right? Regardless of
Exactly.
anything. So, especially, I mean,
Exactly.
you own the business, right? So there's a lot more riding on it than being like, I'm gonna go home today and let. healthcare facility deal with it, right?
Right.
I'm going to ask you the flip side of that question now. What's the most rewarding part of your career?
I mean, there's a number of things, but if I could say the most is, look, obviously it sounds trite to say, but you're helping people, and there's so much more to it than just saying that the fact that you're helping people. But it's there's a real satisfaction when, for me now, like I would say early on in my career, was helping people and being a resource for anybody who is in need, whether it's a patient or even a family member. Like it's quite rewarding and satisfying when someone comes to you with a problem, and it feels good to be able to be that person for them. I'd say now, as I've advanced a little bit further in my career, and I'm still very early, it's the satisfaction comes from figuring out a tough problem, whether it's a tough medical problem where patients have gone to a number of other doctors and they still don't know what the hell is going on, or even a surgical problem where they've gone to, let's say, 3 or 4 other urologists and they're like, look, I'm coming to you because I have this problem and I need it fixed. And it does require obviously a lot more time to think about how to do it, and planning ahead specifically for surgery. Of like, sometimes I lose sleep the night before thinking about how I would go about it. But then the outcome, especially when it's a good one, oh man, that's quite. So right now, I would say that defines satisfaction and job happiness for me.
That's awesome. Justin, if someone's going into this field, what is something that either no one's going to tell them, or that maybe you were personally surprised by once you got into it?
If you're a doctor, any type of doctor, if you want to go into urology or any type of medicine, learn the business side of medicine. But medicine is becoming, medicine is a business, right? And it's becoming more and more that way. Unfortunately, doctors are never taught the importance of understanding the business side of things. I think it's always been somewhat of a taboo subject. Like, why would you ever think about it that way? You're trying to help people. We are. That's the number one priority. But it's becoming a business. Understand the business, because if you don't, you're going to get ripped off, whether it's from your employer, your contracts, all of that stuff. You have to be on top of it. No one else will. Make sure you learn it. If you don't learn, there's so many resources out there to learn it. Use AI for it to teach you, but understand the business side of medicine.
Would it be worthwhile for someone either in going for their, who's in pre-med, or just going through their first 4 years of college? Do you find benefit in taking like business classes on the side as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know so much. I never took those classes, so I can't necessarily comment on the utility of it. But to get like just getting an MBA, I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to make you a good business. I mean, it's very good in terms of translating that to the business side of medicine, because it's quite niche, the business side of medicine. But understanding what your value is, what you're pulling into a healthcare system, and what they're paying you, and understanding that delta, because sometimes you're pulling in $2 million for these healthcare systems, but they're paying you a couple $100,000, and obviously that's not fair. So learning what your value is, if you could learn one thing, is what your value is on a daily to yearly basis, and what your value for the healthcare system and what they're compensating you. Understanding that's probably the best place to start. I wouldn't necessarily say getting an MBA and stuff like that's going to be a super beneficial when it comes to that kind of equation.
Awesome. That's a great piece of advice. Justin, anything I neglected to ask you today that there's no way I covered everything? That's kind of the idea here. But what did I neglect to ask you that you feel would be really important for the audience to know?
Not much, other than the fact that, listen, I think if I could comment on medicine is a great field. I think there's a lot of detractors talking about how medicine's changing, and it is. And I would say there's a lot of downsides to it. By the end of the day, it really is a great field. If you go into it for the right reasons, which is, of course, to help people. You want to have a good, comfortable lifestyle. It checks off those boxes. Just make sure you understand the business side of medicine to protect yourself.
Perfect. Justin, thanks for your time. I appreciate having you. Hey, if someone wants to reach out, either ask you a question about your career, or if they happen to be in the LA area and want to inquire about services or whatever, we'll link it in the show notes. But what are some of the best ways for someone to get a hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, any of the social media channels, Justin HOUMAN MD, HOUMAN, or my website, humanmd.com.
Perfect. And as a reminder, we'll link that in the show notes and the website. So, Dr. Justin HOUMAN, everyone, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Explore other careers or share yours with us. Just check out our website as well. Until next time, go Bills. And finally, go Sabres.